Hello everyone, welcome back, and thank you for joining us on the Live Unreal with Glover U podcast, where every week, Jeff Glover will dive deep into the questions that you are asking. He understands the challenges you're facing on a day-to-day basis because he still works every day on the front lines of real estate, with him and his team closing over 1,000 homes per year. Today, Jeff will share with you the Real Estate Agent Business Plan for 2020, Part 1, 2019 Review, and 2020 Goal Setting. We will learn from Jeff why it's important to prepare your business plan today and prepare for the shifting market of tomorrow. Now, let's hear from Jeff Glover.
So everyone should have their plan, the 2020 business plan. Everyone should also have a yellow pad of some kind. Yep, thank you. Everyone should have a yellow pad and a pen of some kind, because I'm going to be making notes with the plan with you as we go through the plan. Now, let me tell you first why we decided to do this. Number one, it's 2020, so it's a new decade. But number two, more important than anything, the reason why this plan is particularly important is because not only is our market changing in most areas, but our industry is changing, all right? So again, I know some of you guys are just chiming on. If you didn't get a copy of the plan, we will send it out to you after the video at this point, and we are recording this, so we will send out the recording as well, so just follow along and take notes the best you can. Going back to the reason why this topic is important, because our industry is going through a shift right now. And it's a shift where technology and advancements in technology is creating a position of less loyalty between our consumers and us as realtors. So as you'll see as we go through this plan, a lot of the focus for this year will be based around how do we create more loyalty from the clients that we currently have, and then of course, how do we add more people to our database? So I will be walking you through those couple of things. If you would do me a favor, go ahead and turn your business plan open to the first page. We're going to start with section 1. Section 1, it says 2019 projections based on year to date. Now, the first couple of sections, for those of you that are high analyticals, high C's, you're going to geek out on the first couple sections. Everyone else, especially you high I's and you high expressives, just bear with me. We'll get through the number stuff and we'll get into the fun stuff soon. But for my high analyticals and my high C's in the room, we're going to be going through some numbers. We're going to be talking a lot of numbers here in a minute. Then we'll get into some of the fun stuff. So let's talk about the 2019 projections. By the way, we've been operating from a plan that is similar to this plan for the last decade. So we've been working with agents for the last decade specifically on this plan. We have made some significant changes to it. And by the way, it's the first time we've made major changes. We've always tweaked things and modified things based on what's going on in the market or in the industry. But today we've made some major changes to the plan. And I'll go through the whole plan and obviously point everything out to you. So starting with section 1, 2019 projections, all right? We are heading into the month of December, the last month of the year. So by now, you should have a pretty good idea of where you're going to finish up. And I'm not necessarily going to spend a ton of time walking through every single one of these, so I'll just go through them fairly quickly. But if there is one that I think I need to dig deeper on, trust me, I will dig deeper on it, okay? So taking a look at 2019 projections, in order to know where we're going in the next year, we got to know what we did in the previous year. Seems pretty common sense, right? So starting with total income paid, that's obviously the money that's been paid to you before taxes. Total closed deals, how many closed deals you're going to end up with. How many appointments you went on, how many listings or listing appointments went on, how many listings taken. Of those listings taken, how many listings are sold. Now I want to stop there for a minute. Those three numbers are very important, because then once I know my ratios, once I know, all right, I went on 50 appointments and I took 25 listings, we know you're off 50-50 conversion. 50% of the appointments you go on, you convert. Why is that number important? Because when we go into 2020, it's important that we know, okay, if I want to take 30 listings, I got to go on 60, for instance. Now, of course, I would argue that if your skills improve, maybe your percentage of conversion will improve, but at a minimum, we can start to learn these numbers. So total listing appointments, total listings taken, total listings sold. Got to know those numbers. Buyer controlled or buyer consultations leads to how many buyer offers written, leads to how many buyer controlled sales. By the way, let me give you some sample numbers, or what I would call some rules of thumb. These are numbers of associates that work with Glover U and associates that work with us, and these are some of the ratios we share with them. So let's first look at listing appointments gone on to listings taken. If you want to just make a note in the left margin, or if you have a yellow pad that you're keeping track on, listing appointments gone on to listings taken should be at least, you want to strive for 65%. All right, when we coach agents, and a lot of them come to us, they're taking a third or 25% or maybe 50%. Our goal is to get everyone up to 65% gone on to taken. Now, if you're out there saying, well, 65%, I'm doing 80 or 90, well, then I would say you're not working with enough people that you don't know, right? There's two types of people we know, people we don't know. Which group is bigger? Obviously, the people that we don't know. So if you're working with only your sphere of influence, then your percentage will probably be higher. But once you start working with strangers, prospecting, mailings, open houses, door knocking, whatever, then that number starts to come down. The benchmark is 65% of appointments gone on to listings taken. Another benchmark I want you to write down, if you're following along, you can do this on the left-hand side of the plan. Total listings taken to total listings sold. That number should be 85%, meaning it should be your goal to sell 85% of your inventory moving forward. Now, some of you may say, gosh, I took 20 listings last year, I only sold 10. Well, then your number would be 50%. We'll obviously got to work with you on helping you understand pricing and how to present price and how to overcome objections in relation to price. But our goal is for every agent that works with us at Glover U, they sell penned 85% of their listings taken. All right, let's move down to buyer consultations to offer written. We believe that for every 3 buyer consultations, you're going to have 1 offer written. So 1 out of 3 buyer consultations is going to lead to an offer written. So if you want to put in there buyer consultations to buyers offer written, that would be 33%. So you meet 3 new buyers, 1 of them you're going to convince to make an offer with you. Now, of course, that's taking into consideration that you're having a good buyer consultation. A good buyer consultation consists of a sit down. I'll give you 2 thoughts on that. Number 1, you should make sure whenever possible to do the buyer consultation at their home. Why is that? Well, because when you ask the question, how much are you planning on putting down on your next home? They'll say to you, well, I don't know. We need to know what our home is worth. And then that's how we lead into listings taken. The reason why it's important to do it at their home and not at the office, you've heard for years, come into the office, do it at the office. No, because they're more likely to talk to you about listing their home for sale. The challenge is, and we've probably been in this situation before if we've been doing it for a while, we get real excited about working with a buyer. We're showing them a tons of homes. We're getting into great conversation and dialogue with them. And then next thing you know, they end up listing their house with someone else. How is that possible? I've been working with them. I've been showing them homes. Because you never brought it up. You forget to bring it up because we get so caught up in the excitement of showing homes. So I like to do the buyer consultation at their home, number 1. Number 2, when I do a buyer consultation, now more than ever, I want to make sure I'm discussing with them what their buying power is. So I'm going through what I would consider a buying power checklist. All right. This is separate. I sometimes get on tangents, and I'll give you bonus content. If you've been to any of our events, a lot of times I get on tangents and have conversations about other things that you need to know in relation to real estate. Buying power checklist. What is a buying power checklist? A buying power checklist is everything a buyer needs to know and possibly do to get their offer accepted. And that's something you go over with them during the buyer consultation. So it's a sheet of paper with a list of everything that they need to do in order to make their offer stand out. And you just educate them one by one. Why is a buying power checklist important right now? Because number 1, when inventory is low, we have to get out of the box and we have to be creative with our offers to get them accepted. But number 2, because a lot of buyers, when you go to write an offer and then you have a discussion with them about what it's going to take to get their offer accepted, they don't take your advice. All right. Anybody besides me been in that situation? We've all been in that situation. We give them advice. They don't take it. They're more likely to take your advice if you do the buyer during the buyer consultation, a buying power checklist, which is a list of everything they can do to get their offer accepted. Agents that work with us obviously end up getting a copy of that. I would just make your own. You know what it's going to take to get your offer accepted or to get their offer accepted. Okay, average sales price, average commission check, that's your check after your split. Average hours worked per week, pretty self-explanatory. Current pendings, I need to know if I'm going to figure out projections and what you're going to close, how many do you have pending right now? Present listing inventory, I need to know as part of your plan, if you're going into 2020 and your goal is to sell 20 homes and you have 10 already active going into the new year, well then maybe you don't need to take 20 or 30 more listings. Maybe you only need to take 10 or 12 because we're going to take into consideration what you have rolling into the new year. All right. So I want to know what your present inventory is. Present buyer pipeline. Present buyer pipeline, definition of that are buyers that you're actively showing homes to, either with yourself personally or with a showing agent. Present buyer pipeline is how many buyers you're actively showing homes to. And you'd say, well, what's your timeline on that? I would say within the last 2 weeks. Buyers that you're actively showing homes to in the last 2 weeks. Why are those important? Because just like your listing inventory, those are buyers that are probably going to end up writing, if not writing, for sure closing in 2020, right? Any buyer sale we write in December is probably going to close in 2020 at this point. So I want to have an idea of essentially the carryover business. What are you carrying over into the next year? All right. Total days work, you could figure that one out. All you have to do is go back and look at your calendar and look at the days that you put stuff in there and look at the days you didn't. Total hours prospected, total contacts. What's the definition of a contact? You guys should all know this by now if you've been following our stuff. Definition of a contact is a response from a decision-making adult, a response. It used to be, the old definition was a hello. Today it's a response. They could respond with go fly a kite. They can respond with whatever they want. As long as they're responding, that counts as a contact. And the last two on there is total number added to database, METs, total number added to database, non-METs, okay? The difference between a MET and a non-MET, all right? A MET would be somebody that you've had a great conversation with. Maybe you met them at their house, you met them at the grocery store, you met them at an open house. They know you, they like you, they're going to trust you at some point because you're going to provide value. That would be somebody that you would add to your database so you could continue to give them value back, whether it's market data, listings, client events, whatever. We'll get into some of the values that you can add in a moment. But these are people that you've met that you're adding to your database that you're going to provide value to. Total number added to database, non-met. These are people that you had a good conversation with, but maybe you haven't met them yet. Maybe you haven't had a chance to, you didn't get a chance to go on that appointment. Perfect example would be someone that says, Jeff, yeah, we're really serious about selling or really serious about moving, but we want to wait until spring. You know, could we put our appointment on hold until the spring? Now, of course, I would go back and watch my objection handler video on how to handle waiting until spring. But if I can't overcome it, I would add them to my database as someone that I haven't met, somebody that I want to follow up with at a later date. Okay, so that's the difference between METs and non-METs. And for those of you that are using our planner, it's at the bottom. By the way, this is, again, I come up with side things from time to time. At the bottom of each page, whether you're using our planner or not, okay, at the bottom of each page, you see that box? This needs to be part of your daily routine. I know it's a little blurry. This needs to be part of your daily routine. And what am I tracking? Contacts made, appointments set, appointments gone on, contracts signed, and add to database. All right, that needs to be my focus for every single day. How many people am I speaking to? How many appointments am I setting? How many appointments am I going on? How many contracts am I getting signed? And if I don't do a good job here, at least did I add somebody to this database, right? That's important. Who do I need to add every single day? Watch this. You add one person to your database every day, and let's say you work 270 working days. Take into consideration you're probably going to work some weekends. So let's say you work 300 working days. That's 300 new people added to your database a year if you just add one person a day. You all have conversations with people, even if it's just, you know, a 2-minute conversation. If you have 10 conversations, I promise you one person will be database worthy. So if you just think about this, one person per day, 300 working days a year, that's 300 added to your database in 1 year. Times that by 5. In 5 years, you have 1,500 people in your database that have had a great conversation with you that you can now add value to. But here's the mistake that a lot of agents make. Because they don't make it a high priority, because it's not part of their daily routine, they don't get added. And it's kind of an afterthought. Oh man, I should have added that person. Well, if you're using a planner like this, and this isn't a sales pitch for a planner, I don't care what planner you use, but you better have some level of daily routine that you're adding every single day. Otherwise, it won't happen, okay? All right, so that is section 1. Section 2, let's talk about the business sources from 2019. So we're on page 2 of the plan, business sources from 2019. Now this, what I want you to do is put in here closed units from each of these sources. Now, and you may work some sources that were not working. Now, these are all the sources that we either work, when I say we, our team at Jeff Glover and Associates, or the agents that coach with us. We have now close to 100 agents that are working with us around the country. These are the sources of business that they're working. We also left you some space for some other ones down there at the bottom. So I want to know closed units from each one of those sources. So if I did 13 deals from my SOI, I'm going to write 13. If I had 7 closings from expireds, I'm going to write the number 7. I just want to see a number of closed units from each one of those sources. All right. Pretty self-explanatory. We've added a few of them, but you guys pretty much get the gist of those. All right. Step 3. This one's a fun one, and this is a new addition for the business plan. We have not focused on this in the past, and it's something that we've added to the plan for this year. Section 3. It's called the double down elimination activity. I'm on the top of page 3. Double down elimination activity. What I want you to do here is twofold. Number one, I want you to go back to your sources, the numbers of closed business from these sources. And I want you to pick one source that you believe you got a good return on your time or your money. It doesn't even have to be your number 1 source. It can be your number 2 source. It can even be your number 3 source. Just pick one that you believe, based on the time that you put in or the money you put in, you got a pretty good return. So for instance, a good example may be, well, I did 24 open houses in 2019 and I did 12 transactions. That means every other open house, I get a deal out of it. Probably a pretty good use of your time. If you figure an open house is 3 hours plus drive time, okay, let's just call it 4 hours per open house. Okay, 2 open houses, that's 8 hours for one transaction. What do you make on that one transaction divided by 8 hours? That's a good use of your time. You might want to consider increasing that number to 36 or even double down 48. Or you may look at, well, my sphere of influence and past client was really good to me this year. You know, I know a lot of people, but I feel like I could do better. Well, if you think you could do better from your sphere of influence, your past clients, the answer is probably yes. There's a kind of an old rule of thumb that's been around a long time, and that is called the 10% rule. And what the 10% rule, and by the way, the 10% rule, the reason why this plan's important, the 10% rule is being challenged right now because there's so many things that have come in and made it easier for consumers to be less loyal to us. So for those of you that remember the golden 10% rule, which I'll share in a second, it's being challenged right now. Who knows, in 3 years, we might call it the 8% rule. Anyways, what the 10% rule says is that if you have 100 people in your database, meaning names, phone numbers, email addresses, home addresses, contacts, they know you, they like you, they trust you. We're talking the Mets, okay? By the way, have not Mets, you know, those could be a Zillow lead. That could be somebody that you had a conversation with, but it went very well, but you haven't met them yet. I'm talking just your Mets for a second. The 10% rule applies to your Met database. And these are the people that know you, like you, trust you. What it says that if you have 100 people in your database, 10% rule is the goal. You should be getting 10 transactions from that group. Now that doesn't mean you're going to have 10 people out of 100 move and use you. You might only have 3, but you get 7 referrals to make up the other, right? So 10% of the number of people in your database is the transaction number of deals that you should get from it. So let's look at it this way. Bigger scale. You have 1,000 people in your database. You should be doing 100 transactions from your database if you're following the 10% rule properly. Now, following the 10% rule properly means you have to add value to your database, which we'll get to in a little bit. It's a whole nother discussion, quite honestly, but we'll talk about that. I'll touch on that a bit. So if I know I'm getting a good return on my database, but I did, let's say, just using the example of 1,000 people in my database, I have 1,000 people in my database and I did 50 deals for my database. That means I had the 5% return. That's half of 10%. That means there's probably more I can do to get that number up. So therefore, I'm going to write down database business. I'm going to double down on database business next year because I got a good return. I think I can get even a better return. Remember the rule of 10%. And also know that the rule of 10% is being challenged. So how do we overcome it? We either A, add more value, B, build a bigger database and play the numbers game. In other words, if the rule of thumb was 10 and let's say this year it's 8, well, if I add more people to my database, I'm still going to get the same return. Or you can do what we're doing next year, and that is building a bigger database and adding value to it, which will keep us at that 10% level. Or for some of our agents that aren't at that level, get to that level. So source to double down on. What does doubling down mean? Doubling down means increasing your activities, increasing your efforts, increasing your spend sometimes on a source to get more out of it. A true double down is doubling my activity. You know, I did 24 open houses last year and I got 12 deals. I'm going to do 48 and I'm going to get 24. That is a pure example of doubling down. Or it can be on Zillow, Realtor.com spend. I spent $2,000 a month on Zillow, $24,000 annually, and I did 10 transactions from it. And of those 10 transactions, I made $48,000. I spent 24 to make 48. I'm going to double my spend. I'm going to go from 24 to 48 and turn that into 100,000. Doesn't always work that way the first year, by the way, but that is an example of doubling down. The next one is source to eliminate. What do I mean by source to eliminate? What I mean by source to eliminate is you go back to section 2, and you look at all your business sources. And you look at a source that you would say was kind of a pain in the neck. You know, I'll use open houses as an example again, because I know some of you guys love open houses, some of you hate them. You could say to me, Jeff, I did 12 open houses last year and I got one deal from it. I can attribute one deal from my 12 open houses last year. And then I would say to you, okay, how long were your open houses? If I was coaching you today, 3 hours, okay, plus drive time, 4 hours. 12 times 4, 48 hours for one transaction. Okay, let's do some math. You made $3,000 on the deal, divided by 48 hours. You'd be better off working at Starbucks. So we're going to eliminate that source from your plan next year. So one thing we're encouraging agents to do is eliminate one source and double down on one source. The reason why we need to eliminate one is because we only have so much time or spend available. So in order to double down on something, I normally need to get some time available to double down on something. So that means I need to eliminate something. So that would be a source that you would say gives you a low ROI on either your time or your money. All right. So the activity I just gave of the open houses, that's an example of how it's a lower ROI on your time. It could be Zillow. It could be whatever, right? You could be in the other boat and say, I spent $24,000 last year on Zillow and I did 3 deals from it. What'd you make on those 3 deals? $3,000 a pop, $5,000 a pop, whatever it is, $15,000. Okay. And you probably had some expenses, administrative expenses. All right. Well, next thing you know, you're spending 24 to make 15. Doesn't make sense. Let's go ahead and eliminate that. And oh, by the way, instead of spending 24,000, let's spend 15,000, but let's put it towards your database as a for instance. So we either need to move money or we need to move time. And that's the purpose of section 3 in the plan. Okay, section 4, one of my favorite parts. This is where you get to say, here's what I want to make. All right. Now, for those of you that have been doing it a year or two, okay, for those of you that have been doing it a year or two, it's not uncommon that you could actually double your business in year 1 to year 2. The reason is because the learning curve is so steep in that first and second year in the business. So if you're, hey, Jeff, first year in the business, I did 12 deals. It's not uncommon that you would do 24 deals, right? Or 20 deals or 30 deals. I'm okay with you setting a goal to double your business. All right. Here's the challenge. For those of you that have been doing it longer, that learning curve has diminished to some degree. So the percentage at which you can increase your skills, the percentage at which you can increase your conversion is a lot smaller in year 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 and 5 to 7, 7 to 10 and so on than it is in those first couple of years. So if you're looking for kind of a rule of thumb, a good rule of thumb is at a minimum standard, everyone should have a plan. If you're of the mindset that you want to increase your business and increase your income, because by the way, we have associates that work with us that say, you know what, Jeff, I just want to make the same. I made $100,000 last year. I'm good with that number, but I want to figure out a way to work 40 hours a week instead of 50. Awesome. I love it. So then you'd write that down as your goal. And as we go through the plan, you'd specify how we're going to do that in less time. But as a rule of thumb, you want to increase. If you're kind of the ambitious, the go-getter, yeah, I got to increase. This is business. Ford or GM or Chrysler, they don't have a goal to do less every year. They have a goal to do more. So what is that rule of thumb? Well, that rule of thumb is 20% increase. The rule of thumb is 20%. Now, some of you can get up to, again, I'm talking to the folks that have been doing this 3 to 5 years or more. 20% is the rule of thumb. Some of you can get up to a 30 to 35% increase year over year. It's extremely difficult to double your business once you've been doing it 3-4 years, unless you were just part-time or you have a unique situation. So the rule of thumb is you should have, if you did 50 deals next year, your goal this year is 60 to 65, right? 20 to 30% increase. All right. So that's how you determine what you should increase. Now, if your goal is to do the same amount of business in less time, then you'd write that down. And then we talk about how we're going to do that as we go on. Okay. Total income. So closed deal goal. Well, that's how you determine your total income based on what your average commission check is, which we talked about in section 1 and 2. Times the closed deal, boom, there's your new income. Now, why is there a written sales goal right below that? Well, because not all of the deals that you write are going to close. Our rule of thumb on that is also 85% of deals written to deals closed. So if I want to do 100 deals next year, let's just say, I need to write 115 to get to 100 closed deals. And then, so when I think about what I need to do each month, I would take 115, divide it by 12, and then that's my number I need to hit each month. So your written sales goal and your closed deal goal should be about 85% of what your written sales goal is. So if you say to me, Jeff, my goal is to close 50, I want to hit that 50 number. That's the benchmark. Well, I'm going to say to you, you probably need to write about 56 to 58 units to close 50. That's what that is. Of course, then your total income, you take your average check times closed units, boom, there's your total income. Now, for those of you that are saying, well, yeah, but my goal is to increase my average sales price next year, I will tell you this, you can definitely put an effort to increase your average sales price and probably do that. Based on the market we're in, I'm seeing appreciation across the board slow down. So to be conservative, we're telling all the agents that work with us, I want you to keep your average check or your average sales price the same in 2020 as it was in 2019. Now, if I was talking to you in 2017 and we just saw a huge increase in value from 2016 to 2017 and all the trends were saying that values were going up, then I would say, okay, values increased by 10% in 2016. Let's plan on that again in 2017 because we see that trend. Well, right now we're seeing the trend come the other way. We're starting to see a slowdown in appreciation. So we're telling agents that work with us to leave that number the same. If your average check was $27.50 in 2019, then your average check in 2020 is going to be $27.50 because we believe the market's going to be about the same. Maybe a couple point increase, but I'd rather be conservative. Okay, how many days am I going to be working? How much time am I going to spend prospecting? You know, we recommend a minimum of 2 hours a day. Some of people that work with us are only doing 60 to 90 minutes, and some people are doing up to 3 hours. So everyone should have a specified amount of time that they're prospecting. Contacts per day goal. We had a great half-day session a couple weeks ago. We called it the Duel in Detroit. One of the agents in the audience asked about the contacts per day, contacts per hour. Although that number is dropping over the phone, we're picking up those contacts in other areas, either through text messaging or through emailing. So as a rule of thumb, your contacts per hour should still be around 8 to 10 contacts per hour. If you're really efficient and really intense with your prospecting, you can probably get to more like 11, 12, 13 contacts per hour. But as a rule of thumb, 10 contacts per hour is still achievable. It's just not all over the phone. And if you're wondering, well, where's all these are all for other sessions, right? Today's the business plan. We're not going to dig too much into that. I'm already past the halfway point. Okay, listing appointments set, listings gone on, listings taken, listing sales written. All right, we already talked about some of those ratios. You should know your ratios as time goes on. Buyer consults, buyer's offer written, buyer sales written goal, okay, because not all of your offers are going to be accepted. Total combined written sales. So this is where I take the listing sales written and the buyer sales written and combine those two. That number should match the second line, right? So if I want to close 50, my written sales goal on the second line is 57 and down here it's 57. Those two numbers should match, all right? Goals for hour work per week, days work per week. I always encourage agents, especially in your first 5 years in the business, 5.5 to 6 days per week is the norm if you're full-time and you want to sell at least 25 to 30 homes a year. 5.5 to 6 days a week, your first 2-3 years in the business. You do get the luxury as time goes on. A lot of our associates, we're going through the business plan with them right now, or our coaching clients, where we're asking them, how many weekends do you want to take off per month? So then they're identifying, I'm going to work 2 weekends per month in the next 12 months, or 3 weekends per month, whatever it is. Everyone's still working some level of weekends because that's the business we chose, by the way. But if we're newer in the business, then obviously we should be working every single weekend if you want to sell 25, 30 plus homes a year. All right, total contacts added to database. There that is again, Mets and have not met. All right, we already covered that.
Thank you for taking your time to join Jeff today on the Live Unreal with Glover U podcast. To get started on having an unreal business, take the real estate self-assessment. After you complete the assessment, a member of Glover U will get on a call with you to create an action plan to improve your score. Go to www.gloveru.com/self. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Search for Live Unreal with Glover U on iTunes, Podbean, or Spotify, and subscribe today. Until next time, remember, not only is our market changing in most areas, but the entire industry is changing.